Hello friends, Adam here with FED. A few days ago I put up a poll asking what your favorite map objective in Fire Emblem is, and I'll have the results on screen now, and as you can see, Defend is the one that won, by quite a bit, by quite a wide margin. I was surprised to see that Defeat Boss was second place, and then following that you had the other options up there. Escape didn't fit, so I had to leave it off. In retrospect, I wish I would have put Escape on there instead of Survive, or maybe lumped Survive and Defend together. Although there were some comments that talked specifically about how they like Survive over Defend, so I don't think there was a real great way to list everything there. But regardless, I think Escape would have done well on the poll by the amount of comments that said Escape was their favorite. So yeah, we're going to talk about these results. We're going to look at your comments and respond to them. But before we get into that, please consider subscribing to the channel. We have a goal of reaching 25,000 subscribers by the end of the year. So if you're not subscribed and you wouldn't mind, I would really appreciate it. It would mean a lot. So I promise to give you guys lots of Fire Emblem content over the next few months, and hopefully for a long time coming. And hopefully we'll get to that sweet 25,000 sub mark. All right, back to the video now. Let's look at some comments, shall we? So because Defend was the most voted in the poll, it makes sense that the highest rated comment, or the comment that got the most likes, comes from someone who wanted to talk about Defend maps. And the top rated comment is actually Giga Excalibur, who was the top rated last time as well. So they say, okay, thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk about why Defend is the best map objective in the series. Fire Emblem games are generally poor at guiding players to play the maps quickly. Most enemies will only move when a unit steps into their attack range, meaning they can be lured by a defensive unit to take them out on the next player phase, or possibly even that enemy phase. This is an incredibly safe option, and players can spend tens of turns turtling and placing units in the bare minimum amount of danger possible. Now, there's a lot more to read here, and we are going to touch on another part of your comment, Giga Excalibur, and I'll leave it on screen for you guys to read, or you can pause and read it, But yeah, I think Defend maps inherently play into the way a lot of people play Fire Emblem, if that makes sense. Fire Emblem tends to be easiest when you do turtle, when you keep your units together and you lure enemies one at a time, and that's fine. You know, if that's the way you like to play the game, that's the way you like to play the game. And really, on the harder difficulties, sometimes that feels like the only thing you can really do to be successful. People like to think that they can play quickly, and they like to think like, oh, I can be Pala Emblem, or I can be Don, or whatever, and I'll beat this map in 2 turns or 1 turn or whatever, and play quickly and get all the objectives and stuff like that. And they think that's like the way to play the game, but there's a lot to be said for playing your way. There isn't like a correct way to play Fire Emblem, and I think that was my favorite thing about all the comments here, which I did read all of your comments, by the way. I do read every comment. I think that was one of my favorite things that I learned from reading all your comments, though, is that yeah, everyone enjoys the game for different reasons, and I think that's really, really cool. Alright, and I'm going to skip the middle paragraph of Giga Excalibur's comment here, but I want to read their last one because this is a really good point. On a final note, Defend maps are generally associated with extremely strong story moments. Radiant Dawn's Alencia's Gambit, Blazing Blades, Battle Before Dawn, 3 Houses to War, and Sacred Stone's Last Hope are all incredibly tense maps where the player's army is vastly outnumbered and it had to hold their location from a seemingly endless amount of enemy reinforcements. It makes victory against those impossible odds feel much more satisfying than your average route or siege map. I love that idea. I love that point. It's I think part of the reason we like Defend maps so much is because it's like inherently an underdog story, and people love a good underdog story. One of my personal favorite maps in the entire series is Radiant Dawn 313, so Part 3, Chapter 13. It is, the Dawn Brigade and the Daein Army, by extension, are defending a stronghold, a fortress keep thing from the Laguz Alliance, who are accompanied by the Grail Mercenaries. And the Grail Mercenaries should, or most likely do, just completely outclass you. There's Laguz pouring in from all directions, not just from in front of you. There's tons of reinforcements. It feels desperate and dire the entire time. It's really cool. It's a really cool story and gameplay integration for me personally. I really enjoy it, especially on harder difficulties. It can feel really tense to keep it up with all your weak, squishy, Dawn Brigade units that you have. Because like chances are you only have a few units that are actually really powerful at that point from the Dawn Brigade, and most of your units are crappy, right? It's just kind of how it goes. So I'm a big fan of that idea that, yeah, defend chapters are generally accompanied by really good story moments. So thank you for that comment. Really appreciate it. And again, good on you for two videos in a row, 2 polls in a row having the top rated comment. It's kind of cool. All right, next let's look at Shaleem Leem, who says, I personally like boss maps quite a bit just because I like the notion of being able to swarm a powerful enemy with my entire party. That's what's fun for me. However, I can understand if people don't enjoy these maps as much just because you can generally warp cheese them. Sometimes I try to refrain from doing that when I play. I like the Umbral Beast fight from 3 Houses, Cindered Shadows, a lot because I felt like it was designed to be difficult to cheese. The relatively small map, respawning enemies, and unit shuffling actually made for a battle that kept me on my toes most of the time, even on normal difficulty. I didn't think the boss was super hard, but the introduction of mechanics to keep the player at bay made the fight a lot more memorable and fun. I hope they use similar ideas for the major fights in Engage. So you bring up a good point about, specifically you bring up the final boss of Cindered Shadows, and that boss I remember that boss actually being a fairly intriguing fight. I wouldn't call it difficult, like you said. It wasn't super hard or anything, but it was fun. It was interesting, and I think some of my favorite chapters in the series do come from really good defeat boss maps, but they have to be good. You know what I mean? I'm thinking Radiant Dawn Endgame when you fight a Sheriff. That one is really good. And I think it's because it's multifaceted. You aren't just swarming a boss and killing some general. You have to like kill all the auras. You have to worry about enemies swarming and stuff like that. So like the little spirit enemies guys swarming your units, or healing the auras before you can kill them all the way. And then Ashera herself has all these different attacks that are AoE or like really strong focused attacks. It's really cool stuff, and I'm really into it. So yeah, I think boss fights have potential to be really interesting and cool, but a lot of times they do kind of devolve into, oh, I'll just warp my strongest unit over there, or I'll just run my strongest unit over there as fast as possible and kill them. I think a lot of I'm trying to think of some good examples of that kind of idea. I don't know, like Nurgle in FE7. He's not particularly difficult, right? Just a dude. Although I think the Fire Dragon is actually a fairly good defeat boss map. Like, not map, but like defeat boss enemy, right? He's a good boss because it's difficult. By difficult, I mean like it really does take all of your units swarming him to take him down, unless you just Luna cheese, So yeah, I'm really into that. That's a good idea. Thank you so much for your comment, Schleemleem. I think boss maps have potential, but I think they need a really special ending to really be good. Okay, next we have iCav, who says, Seize is my favorite objective for sure, including Escape because they are similar. It's an objective that really brings out the unique part of Fire Emblem compared to other SRPGs, which is its emphasis on movement. Getting your units from point A to point B as efficiently as possible is often rewarded in Seize maps. This is especially true in games like FE12 and FE6, where getting to the seize point as fast as possible is the safest way to clear the map. Even when they are not as tense as in those games, seize maps often have good map design and feel good to play. I'd say defend is my least favorite objective because 9 times out of 10, you just sit at choke points the whole time or clear out pathetic waves of enemies easily. Conquest Chapter 10 is great, but doesn't carry the whole objective type. I'll touch on that second paragraph in a second. Now, first I want to talk about Seize. Seize kind of gets hated on because of its prevalence throughout the series. Every objective in FE1 and its remakes are Seize. Every objective in FE6 is Seize. Every objective in FE4 is Seize. Well, is it Seize? Do you have to seize the final castle in FE4? Let me know in the comments. I don't remember. I'd have to look that up. I can't remember if you just kill the boss and you win, or if you kill the boss and then you have to seize. Yeah, let me know. I forget. if that's the case. But yeah, Seas is just really prevalent throughout the series, so I think it kind of gets looked down on as boring or maybe just for a lack of innovation or something like that. But I think Seas maps do offer a lot in terms of the uniqueness of Fire Emblem. Where I like that you brought up the emphasis on movement, and not just like the movement stat being important, but all the different things that the series has had between like rescue, shove, warp, the rescue staff, all stuff like that, all this different movement tech that you have, and that just makes placement and unit movement like a core fundamental aspect that makes Fire Emblem feel unique. Because a lot of other RPGs and strategy RPGs, tactics games, it's just kind of like, I don't know, all your units have their set move, and there's not a whole lot of ways to affect it, and they just kind of do that movement, right? I like that Fire Emblem does that. So that's really cool. Cool point on that. And now on your comment about Defend being your least favorite, because 9 out of 10 times it's just set at a choke point. I think that's true in some aspects. I think Thracia, especially like Thracia Chapter 14. Some people cite Thracia Chapter 14. It's a defend map where you're defending a big city. There's ballista all around and there's the enemies aren't that scary. I guess some of them can be, especially at the end. It can be kind of freaky when the wyverns show up, but like they aren't even a threat because they don't have enough time to be a threat. But I think like that one is guilty of like you just put units in choke points. I think I'm trying to think of other ones that are have that issue as well that I can't think of off the top of my head because I'm just not thinking. I think one of the early Path of Radiance maps, I can't remember which chapter the number it is exactly, but you're defending the Grail Mercenary Fort in the fog if you're playing on hard mode. That map I think is also, this is a defend map that I'm like, you just kind of sit your units down and wait unless you want to go get the ring from the boss if it's a second playthrough, So I get that. I feel that, but I think to say that Conquest Chapter 10 is the only good one is a bit disingenuous. I think that Three Houses has a really good one in Chapter 14 of Verdant Wind, Silver Snow, and Azure Moon. I think that is a very good defend map. I know most people see it as a defeat boss map or a route map, but it's also a defend map, and that is a key part that makes it difficult in the first, maybe 5 to 10 turns where these Pegasus Knights are swarming you, right? Until you can finally get your green unit Swordmaster person all the way up to that point where they like start the fire attack and all that. So that map is brutal, right? And I think defending it is difficult. I think it's really, really well made that way. I think a lot of people bring up Valencia's Gambit as a good defend map, and I think it is. I do think it's good. And maybe I'm remembering it with like rose tinted glasses or something, but I really enjoy the amount of flying units you get in that chapter. So you can like fly in and kill something and fly back, and it just feels really natural and well made that way. It's just really cool. I don't know. I like defend maps, so maybe I'm just getting, I don't want to say defensive, but I don't know. Those are my thoughts. I don't know. Okay. Let's move on. Next comment again. ICAF, thank you. Master Kuja says, escape all units because it's, in practice, a seize with everyone map. In other words, you need to play the map properly without room for cheesing, at least without some consequences like leaving experience or characters. Best maps for this condition, Conquest Chapter 21, which is the Eternal Staircase, and Thracia Chapter 13. And Dota says, it's escape, albeit with the caveat that it can't be cheesed. I'm thinking of how Thracia lets you leave units behind with hardly any consequences, considering you can get them hauled back from the Gaiden chapter. I really don't like that, even though that map itself is extremely well designed. I think I like escape because it inherently forces you to utilize every deployable unit, even if it's just moving them. And both comments bring up the point of like, I don't want to be able to cheese it, because in a lot of games with escape, a lot of times it's just escape with the main character and you win the map, and there's no reason not to just treat it like a seize map, right? But I think Cindered Shadows escape chapter has a really good example of having to escape with everyone. I think that's really cool. Thracia generally, I think that's also really good, because if you don't escape with a character, they are gone. So Leaf has to be the last person to escape, or you lose characters. And I don't know, you can get them in the guidance chapter, but that's like not until like the end of the game, right? So that can be quite the consequence, I think, personally. So that's cool. I think escape maps, I wish I would have put it on the poll now. I'm sorry that I didn't put that one on there. I think it would have done well. I think escape has some ability to be interesting, but I think of like Path of Radiance escape or Radiant Dawn escape maps that are, you could just escape with Ike or Micaiah and you win the map, right? So I think I do enjoy that those games offer some sort of incentive, though, for escaping with other units. You get bonus experience, right? But I wish that there was more consequence for not escaping with everyone. Instead, you just kind of, I guess it's just assumed that they leave too, which is cool. But all right, enough about escape maps. Let's move on to Alex's comment, who says, survive maps have always felt the most scary to me. Tiki's map in Awakening felt literally endless for the first time I tried to play it. I feel that, I really did. And the map in Three Houses where you have to protect Rhea with the fog, I believe that's the paralogue with Rhea, Catherine, and Ash. That's like Falling Short of Heaven, I think it's what it's called. Kept thinking I got everyone close and would send my guys out to look for the boss of the chapter, only to have Rhea get attacked. So, and then they say escape was fun too, but whatever. I don't want to talk about that. We're talking about survive. Survive maps are ones that don't get brought up often, but I appreciate that. Survive maps are cool. So I just wanted to highlight the comment, because not very many people talked about survive maps, and I wanted to talk about it at least a little bit. So yeah, those are some fun comments. Those are my thoughts on objective. I think my favorite personally is defend, only because it's used sparingly. But if I had to choose like one of the more major ones to be my favorite, I'd probably pick Seize. I think Seize just fits Fire Emblem really well, and it fits, playing. It's fun to figure out how to beat them quickly if you're into that, or you can take your time. It doesn't really matter. So yeah, but again, the cool thing I liked about this topic was it really showed everyone has a different way of playing the game, and that's really, really cool. All right, thanks for watching, guys. Make sure to like the video before you leave, subscribe, help us reach 25,000 subscribers, and of course, comment your thoughts. What is your favorite map objective, and what did you think of the things we talked about today? Again, thanks, and I'll catch you next time, friends.